Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bensalem Township Council meeting. Today's date is August 24th. We're presenting ourselves this evening on the Zoom capacity. Hopefully it will work better than it did during the day. I heard you had some problems with it. Tonight we have with us, we have our council members, which I'm going to introduce them to you, as well as other members of the township being here with us this evening. I'm Ed Kisselbeck. I'm president of Bensalem Township Council. We have Joseph Polari, our vice president. Just wave your hands, guys, so we know who you are. And we have Joseph Knowles, our council secretary. We have Jesse Sloan, council member. And then we have Ed Tokemajian, also a council member. Also this evening, we have Joseph Pizzo, our township solicitor. Russell Benner. Russ, where are you there? Oh, there you go, up there. Quentin Neron is with us also. We have Deborah McBreen, she's our council clerk. Also this evening, we have Bill McVeigh. He's the Deputy Director of Bensalem Township Police Department. I'd like to begin the meeting with a please rise for a moment of silent meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Moving right along, we have the agenda item number 2. We have public comment on the agenda items. I think we're going to move that back into the latter part of the meeting. That would give someone the opportunity, if they want to write in an email, they will be acknowledged if they have any questions or any comments they would like to make. Agenda item number 3 is the council minutes from July 27th, 2020. Gentlemen, have you had the opportunity to review that? If so, is there any changes, any deletions? If not, I entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second, Jesse Sloan and Joe Polari. All those in favor, I think that was correct, is that right?
It was Ed Tokemajian.
Oh, I'm
me.
sorry. You guys,
It was myself, Mr. Kisbeck.
sorry, you guys look so much alike, I'm mistaken you on the thing there, okay? All right, we got,
Don't insult him like that.
all right, gentlemen, all those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Moving right on to agenda item number 4. This is consideration of minor land development. Mr. Pizzo, would like to make comment on that?
Yes, the township administration received a request from the attorney for the applicant asking that this matter be tabled forward to a future meeting of the council in September, I believe. Is that right, Debbie?
Yeah, this is going to take quite some time,
Oh.
so they asked for it if we could have the temporary.
Okay. They did send out notices, Mr. Kisselback, so since they're going to need some additional time, perhaps you want to table this to your second meeting in October. That'll give them 2 months, and then if they need some more time, we can reassess at that point.
All right, gentlemen, so we're looking for the second meeting in October, so they have a date certain, because they already did send out their notices. That way they won't have to do it a second time.
That's correct.
All right?
Date up
gentlemen?
there? You have the date of the second meeting in October?
Just one.
October 26th.
26, okay.
October.
I'll make a motion that we move number 4, the consideration of minor land development Foley Incorporated, to October 26th.
Okay, I need-
Second.
second on the motion? Joe and Joe? Joe Knowles, Joe Polari. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Moving on to agenda item number 5. This is consideration of a preliminary land development.
Preliminary final.
I'm sorry. Oh, this is going to be a preliminary and final land development. Okay.
So with their revised application, this is now an application for preliminary and final. Give me just a moment, everyone, to admit the
Principals.
individuals representing the applicant at this juncture.
And this is going to be for Bensalem MZL LLC. And its location, the addresses are 1749 as well as 1837 Street Road. The proposed use is retail and grocery. This is a GC, General Commercial Zoning Area, and the tax map parcel are 2, and that's 2-43-305, as well as 2-43-305-1. And we're going to try to get everybody up here.
So if I could just for a moment, Mr. Kisselback. So, Mr. McGinnis, first of all, have we admitted everyone that you have for your application this evening?
Yes, we have.
Okay. The township received notice earlier in the day that representatives of Corman Company also wish to testify or give comments at the appropriate juncture of this hearing. And so what I'll do now, with your concurrence, Mr. Kisselback, is admit their attorney and their principals into the hearing as well.
Okay?
No objection to that, Mr. McGinnis?
No, I have no objection to Mr. Landis being admitted. My understanding is that he's not been granted, I don't know if he still is requesting, but has not been granted party status as long as he's not entitled to cross-examine witnesses, for example. I have no objection to him being admitted, no.
In that regard, you are correct, Mr. McGinnis, that this is not a zoning hearing, so neither Mr. Landis nor his client would be considered to be parties or have party status in the same way that we would be discussing that in the context of a zoning hearing. They will not be permitted to cross-examine witnesses or otherwise create any sort of a record of their own. To the extent, however, that they are the adjacent property owner to the property that is being discussed for land development approval, the township feels it appropriate that they be admitted into the Zoom so that they can hear everything that's going on.
No objection about that, no.
And when we call for a public comment on that, since they will be there, they'll be able to make a public comment at that time.
So with that, we are admitting into the hearing Mr. Landis, I see you there. Good evening. All right, you're muted. I don't know if I need to unmute you or you need to unmute you, but give me a second.
Good evening. I just unmuted myself.
Okay. So we were just discussing, first and foremost, if you could take a quick look at your screen. Is everyone who you anticipate joining for this hearing been admitted, or is there still anyone outstanding?
I believe there is still Ron Jackson.
Okay, I see Mr. Jackson there, so we'll let him in.
You do? Okay.
Okay. And that's the only other person waiting in the waiting room. So that should be everyone. As you and I discussed earlier today, Mr. Landis, and as was just discussed prior to you and your team being admitted, we had discussed that, again, this is not a zoning hearing, and we're not functioning under the zoning section of the MPC, so there will be no party status or anything akin to that being granted. But obviously, the township has admitted you and your client and its professionals into the meeting at this juncture so that you can hear everything that's being said and that you can make comments at the appropriate time. The record should also reflect that you did send to me and to the clerk of council a letter with 7 items attached to it. and a subsequent email with an additional attachment. All of those were forwarded on to the council members sometime after their receipt, so they are all in possession of the email and the attachment. And with that, I imagine, Mr. Kisselback, would you want Mr.
Sure.
McGinnis to proceed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pizzo. It's Mr. McGinnis. Where'd you go there?
I'm here still, I hope.
Okay, I see, I got you. Okay, they moved you around a little bit. Okay, what I'd like to do is, first of all, we have a letter here, and then we have, finally, we did get the response to the 30 items on the subdivision and land development. However, prior to that, we had the zoning ordinances, and they were also responded to. Were any variances granted for this project?
No, we applied for no variances for this project.
All right, so everything has been complied to as far as the zoning when you went there, is that correct?
That's correct. Everything in zoning is a will comply.
All right, then let's go to I'm going to your response letter, which all of us received it about possibly around 5 o'clock this evening, somewhere in that general area. But if we go to Chapter 201, Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, what I'm interested in doing at this point is, there were 30 items there that were addressed from our township engineer, Mr. Benner. And what I'd like to know is, out of those 30, which one of those are you going to be interested in asking for a waiver?
So we have 10 waivers requested, and those are addressed in the letter from Mazer and Chris Riggle, who's with us. We did appear in front of the Planning Commission and did resubmit our plans following our appearance in front of the Planning Commission, and did provide these response letters to the township on August 3rd. I can go through just so everybody has an accurate list. Perhaps the easiest way to orient council would be just to highlight the letters, or the numbers in the T&M review letter, which are either waiver requests or partial waiver requests. And then after those are read, we can break them down sequentially if that would be adequate and acceptable to you, Mr. President.
All right, what I'd like to do, let's start we have from 1 through 30. Let me start with the first one numerically, and I'll read it, and then you'll respond in the dark printing what your response was to us, okay?
Very good.
So the first one is?
The first waiver is number 5.
All right, number 5 reads, in accordance to the Saldo, Section 201-41-small d Number 9, the preliminary plan shall provide all existing sewer lines, water lines, fire hydrants, utility transmission lines, culverts, bridges, railroads, or other man-made features with the proposed subdivision and land development, and within 400 feet of the boundaries of the proposed subdivision and land development, or less, be provided location with purpose of existing easements and utility rights of right-of-way within 50 feet of the proposed subdivision and land development. Revise a plan to show existing utilities, man-made features, and easements within 50 feet of the site boundary. And your response was?
That we are requesting a partial waiver. We have provided a site aerial map to the township that was added as a sheet in land development submission for existing features that are not within the boundary of the initial survey.
All right, so you're asking for a waiver for number 5. The next number is what? I'm sorry.
The next,
See if that's acceptable to Russ.
the next number is 13.
Thanks. All right, number 13. That says, in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-62-(a), upon approval of the preliminary plan by the Bensalem Township Council, an applicant may submit a final subdivision and/or land development plan along with all required supplementary data to the Township Director of Planning Department. The application does not indicate whether this is a preliminary or a preliminary final plan, okay, which of course you changed that, If the submission is intended to be preliminary final, the applicant should request a waiver to submit preliminary and final land development plan simultaneously. All right, so we
Yeah.
did discuss that, and we know that you are requesting that.
That is correct.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Mr. Kisselback,
Yes.
if council is inclined to grant that particular
We
waiver,
do it now?
which,
No.
the only caveat that should be noted would be that that waiver is traditionally granted with the applicant paying all fees associated with final land development as a condition of the same.
Understood and acknowledged.
All right, and you would agree to that,
Yes.
okay?
Number 17,
And number 17, in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-106, parentheses C, parentheses 1 and parentheses 2, within any land development or subdivision, street trees shall be planted by developer along all streets where suitable street trees do not exist. And street trees shall be planted at intervals of no more than 20 feet or at a greater interval depending upon species selected, but in no case will any tree be planted in existing or proposed street right-of-way. Revise a plan to provide the required street trees along Street Road. This is also referenced in the Bucks County Planning Commission letter.
that's right. And we are requesting a waiver and are willing to provide a fee in lieu instead of the required street trees, which would be submitted to the township.
Now, when it comes to that, my question would be, would you work with our township engineer and yourself, and if there's any places that the two of you would decide would be appropriate, you would put those trees in existence, plant those trees, and any balance it's not recommended by our township engineer, then you would pay the fee in lieu of. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm sure that that's acceptable. Yes.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Kisselback, before you move on to the next one, Mr. Landis, Mr. McGinnis, there is a Daniel Katz in the waiting room. Is he there on behalf of either of you?
I'm getting a head shake from one of our team members, so yes.
Okay, well, and as quickly as I ask the question, he's no longer in the waiting room. If
Okay.
he comes back, we'll let him know.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Pizzo.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, we did number 17.
Number 18,
Okay, 18, in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-106, parentheses C, parentheses A, 8A, where buffer yards are required, an evergreen planting screen shall be used to provide an adequate visual barrier. The landscape plan should reference this as an existing condition, which of course it is. And your response is?
that's correct. It's the same response as the prior response, which is we're requesting a waiver and are willing to post a fee in lieu for this particular subsection.
And then your next number would be?
19,
Number 19, requesting a waiver, and that's in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-106, parentheses C, parentheses 10, B. The following standards are to be used as a guide to the number, not the spacing or location of trees required in all subdivision and land developments. 10 trees per acre of gross site area plus 1 tree for every 5 parking spaces. Provide calculations for the required number of trees based on the net new parking space. We recommend landscaping to aesthetically enhance the large parking area.
right. And we are adding, we are planting trees in the interior of the shopping center. However, we do not have a mechanism to plant the number of trees which would be required by this section. And therefore, for the balance of what we are not planning, we will be posting or requesting to post a fee in lieu to the township.
And again, you would work with our township engineer, and then together you would make that determination.
That is correct.
Okay. Rush, you with me on that? Okay.
Number 21,
Mr. McGinnis, we're at number 21.
yes, sir.
Okay, in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-111, parentheses A, sidewalks shall be provided along streets by the developer. All sidewalks shall meet all applicable standards for access by handicapped persons. Revise a plan to provide sidewalks along Street Road. This is also referenced in the Bucks County Planning Commission letter.
That's That's correct, and we're not providing or illustrating any sidewalks to be installed along Street Road. We're therefore requesting a waiver, and again, like the prior comments, we'll be willing to post a fee in lieu of the installation of sidewalks.
Okay, and your next number is?
22,
In accordance with the Saldo Section 201-112, small d, a planting strip with an average width of 10 feet and minimum width of 7 feet shall be provided between the edge of the parking area and the outside wall of the nearest building. Parking area includes parking spaces, aisles, and driveways. Sidewalks may be included within the planting strip areas. Revise the record plan to dimension the clearance between the new parking and the existing building. Revise a plan to provide a planting strip between the new parking and the existing building along the southeast side of the building.
yes, and we are requesting a waiver for this section because in consultation with one of the two proposed tenants, the grocer tenant would be utilizing this area specifically for curbside loading of customer orders, and therefore, based upon that tenant, we would be unable to comply with this section.
Is there a planting strip beyond where they'd be doing the truck work and coming in and out? I mean, the edge of the building is just, you have, right adjacent to the building, you have the unloading and loading, but beyond that, is there not additional space?
Pull up, Chris, can you address that?
Yeah, no, so the area that we're referring to is actually, I'll say, planned south of the actual loading dock. They use curbside takeout deliveries on this like a striped area alongside the building.
Okay. All right, so the answer is no. God, I
That is
understand.
correct.
Okay. All right, Mr. McGinnis, your next number would be
24,
24? And that is in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-112, small letter I, in parentheses, all non-residential parking areas and access driveways shall be paved and curbed. It does not appear that curb is proposed in the parking area to be improved. Revise a plan to provide curb. This is also reference to the Bucks County Planning Commission letter. Even if the waiver is requested and granted, the plan shall still be revised to provide curb islands along the driveway, which starts at Brookwood Drive at the southeast property line, continues behind the Krispy Kreme and behind the Philly Pretzel Factory. The intent of the curbed island is to provide a more defined drive aisle, which is currently an issue.
right. And this is a partial waiver because we do agree with Mr. Benner's comments. This was discussed at the Planning Commission, and in light of those comments and the comment in this letter and upon our analysis, we are providing curbed islands along the drive aisle behind the Krispy Kreme and the Philadelphia Pretzel Factory on the site plan. We're not providing curbed islands in the entire interior, but we do believe that the plan reflects a defined drive aisle now satisfactory and sufficient to address the comments that Mr. Benner raised. So it is not a complete waiver. It is compliant with the second portion of that paragraph now.
All right, Mr. Benner, do you agree with that?
Yeah, our main concern there was that driveway behind Krispy Kreme and Philly's Off Pretzel. That it's very important that they have curbed islands at that location.
All right, so this would be a partial waiver, and the latter part would be included in your
That's right.
request.
Our plans reflect compliance with the latter part of that comment.
Okay,
And then we have two left, 26.
26 says, in accordance with the Saldo Section 201-112, parentheses, O, all public parking areas shall be illuminated to a minimum of 1 foot candle during the after-dark operating hours. All light standards shall be located on the raised parking island and not on the parking surface. The proposed lights are not located on raised parking islands. Revise a plan to comply. This is also referenced in the Bucks County Planning Commission letter. We offer the following comments regarding proposed lighting. Number one, the lighting of the parking along the rear property is less than 1 foot candle. Our concern is, of course, safety. Number two, the lighting of the parking in the corner west of Philly Pretzel Factory is 0 foot candles. So that must be pretty dark back there. Number three, provide a note indicating intended hours of operation of exterior lighting and methods of control, photocell, time clocked, etc. And then your response, you want to read your responses to 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, so when we appeared in front of the Planning Commission, we had not addressed these items at all. The revised plans following conversation at the Planning Commission were made so that the rear of the property is now compliant. There was a question we had about illumination and the impact on the abutting residential development, but we've addressed that adequately, and we've added the lighting. The second comment raised by Mr. Benner is now addressed as well with the Philadelphia Pretzel Factory, and we have added the note. The only reason why this is a waiver is it's a partial waiver now to preclude us from having to install curbed islands around the light standards within the parking area. So Chris can jump in if he thinks he needs to supplement this, but we have addressed the majority of the comments and what was raised at the Planning Commission.
How would they not be run into by cars if they don't have some kind of a protection around the lights?
They have a concrete foundation base at the bottom of them, and there will be striping around each of the light fixtures or the light poles.
Mr. Benner, would that be acceptable?
Chris, is it possible to put some type of bollards around those? And I'm assuming where would the standards be located as it relates to the parking spaces themselves? Is it the intersection of, head-on parking? And where are they, at these locations where you're proposing them not to be in the islands? Where are they located?
I mean, we're basically using the existing light fixtures or light poles that are on the site right now. We did add additional poles in locations where there was not sufficient lighting out there to raise all the levels up to meet the township ordinance and to meet the tenant's requirements as well. There are several throughout the site that they were kind of just all over the site. So we basically striped them out, lost a parking stall at those locations.
Yeah, and I think the point to emphasize is most of these are existing conditions, existing light standards that are in place already. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct.
So you're increasing the intensity of the already lights that are there? Is that what you're saying?
That's right, because of the addition of the new parking spaces which we're creating on site.
I would have to, if that were going to be granted, I would have to have that under the guidance of Mr. Benner, our engineer, to make sure that would be appropriate.
Yeah, Councilman Kilsback, I would agree. What I'd like to do is, if the waiver is granted, is one of those conditions is we'd sit down and work with Chris to take a look at that and then see if anything additional is needed around those lights where we don't have islands.
Mr. President, if I can volunteer perhaps in conjunction with some of the prior comments raised tonight, I'm sure, as we'll be working with Mr. Benner, if it was granted with respect to the street trees, for example, this could be part of that conversation that we certainly are willing to accept Mr. Benner's comments and work with him to make sure that it's a safe condition in the parking lot.
Okay, well, not only are you going to accept his comments, but you're going to adhere to what he tells you to do.
Correct.
Okay, we want to make sure we know that. Okay, and number three, what's your next one there, number three?
The last one is 27.
No, I'm sorry, you answered number 2, 1, 2, and 3. The third one is you're going to require the note has been added to the lighting plan?
That's correct. It's reflected on our resubmitted plans, yes.
Okay, that's fine. And the next number was 27, did you say? I'm sorry?
Yes, that's the last one.
All right, so number 27 is in accordance with the SALDO Section 201-112, small letter P, all off-street commercial parking facilities which parallel any public right-of-way shall be screened from view by means of earthen berms, mason or brick walls, or a combination of both, and landscaping. Berms shall be minimum of 4 feet in height for passenger cars and 8 feet in height for trucks and tractors. Trailer parking and loading docks, except to provide for access driveways to the site and the necessary site triangle. Landscaping shall be added to the requirement of Section 203-592 of the Bensalem Township zoning ordinance. Height of the berm shall be measured vertically from the surface of the parking lot to the top of the berm. We recommend the applicant provide landscaping to comply with this requirement.
Yes, and I'm going to have Chris jump in here as well, but just to provide a bit of context, this was a point of discussion at the Planning Commission meeting because our position originally was that there's not adequate space to install a berm where it would be required, and the conversation sort of spun off into a question as to whether the existing features actually comply with the section because there is a wooden fence and a landscape screen presently. So we might actually be currently compliant, in which case this would be a will compliant. Of course, I'll defer to Mr. Benner on that. If not, our position is still the same in that there's not adequate space to install a berm. And Chris, if you want to supplement that briefly, it would be welcome.
Before you continue, is this behind the building and to the side of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's along the back side of the building and to the side parking lot. That is correct. There's an existing wooden stockade fence, opaque fence, and landscaping along both sides.
Okay. And so you're asking for a waiver and assuming that this would be appropriate interpretation of the ordinance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Now, we have all these in sight. The others we can go over, but I think since you've addressed them and you are going to comply with them, I would like to, at this time, have our councilman being involved in the conversation, and if they want to go over any one of these that you're asking a waiver for, from the beginning to the end, I'd ask them to hop on board at this
I have
time.
a question about number 21, if that's okay. I'd just like Mr. Benner to say, apparently there's sidewalks along the front, along where the Wawa is, and then they must stop. I don't know, they stop at an entrance, I guess. But, and he's willing to pay in lieu of for the sidewalks not along the street road. Would it not be safe to actually put sidewalks in so people could walk along there because you're crossing entrances? Or what's the purpose of not being able to put sidewalks along street roads so people could walk down street road from, the Krispy Kreme or from the apartments down street road to the Wawa or vice versa?
So Chris, you jump in here too, but we're trying to avoid, part of this is we're trying to avoid working the right of way. Correct, Chris?
Yeah, that's correct. There's about, I would say 250 to 300 feet of area that the parking abuts directly along the right of way. So any sidewalk that would be placed in would not be on, the property in question. It would actually be within PennDOT's right of way. There's a small section that is back behind that it could be placed in, but to be consistent, it would end up going inside the right of way where we would have to go to PennDOT to get a highway occupancy permit.
Well, is Wawa's sidewalk in the right of way?
That I do not know.
Go ahead, Mr. Knowles. Sorry.
Does Russ know if Wawa's sidewalk, which is the only sidewalk along front, is that in there right away?
Let me, I have the plans here, I can look, but the other response to Chris's comment is, I believe in the traffic engineer's letter, there is discussion, you're gonna have to go to PennDOT for some HOP work possibly anyway, if my memory serves me correctly. And why not ask the questions about the sidewalk at that point in time. Is that going to be a problem for PennDOT to put sidewalk in the right of way? I don't see what the problem is.
We've actually already gone, we needed a PennDOT utility HOP for our sanitary sewer connection, which we've already received. Utility HOPs are typically 30-day turnaround. Anything dealing with construction, traffic, curbing is a lot longer lead item.
Yeah.
Well,
Look, very,
Hey, can I make a comment? And I'm not an engineer, but let me ask you if this could occur. Could we make a waiver contingent upon you being turned down first by PennDOT not to build the sidewalks? And then if that's the case, then you would agree to pay in lieu of, but if you're able to build the sidewalk, just build them.
I think if I can jump in very candidly, the concern is not that PennDOT will not permit us to install the sidewalks. The concern is the lead time of the installation of the sidewalk, and receiving an HOP permit potentially jeopardizes the tenants coming into the location. We've been trying to minimize work in the right of way to not have to secure a highway occupancy permit to hopefully move the project along in an expeditious manner. I think that, and again, like one of my clients, or Chris can jump in if that's an incorrect assumption, but I believe that is primarily the basis behind not requesting the installation of the sidewalk.
Joe, can I piggyback on what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Mr. Benner, if they put a sidewalk in, it's going to go to the end of the one driveway. Is there sidewalks going the rest of the way down to Wawa, or is there going to be no sidewalks there at all?
Yeah, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there would be a gap there of sidewalks.
That is correct. There would be a gap. The bank does not have any sidewalk in front of it right now.
Okay. Well, that's why I was asking, would it be safe, or are they people interrupted and if they have to get off sidewalk and back on sidewalk, or cross an entranceway, which I wouldn't want to encourage people to cross where cars are coming in and out. You know what I mean? So
yep.
That's why my original question was, what's the safety, in Mr. Benner's opinion, of putting sidewalk along there? Because I didn't know whether it was or not. If it's a benefit to people being safer and able to walk, then I would want it done, whether it takes long or not. But if it's unsafe and it's interruptive and it's not solid through, like Mr. Polari said, then that's fine. We'll give you the waiver and you can pay for the sidewalks.
And Mr. Knowles, I'd add to that on the other side, it doesn't look like there's sidewalks either. So there'd be a gap, I think, where the Burger King is now, going out to the intersection of Brookwood. So there's no sidewalks anywhere except for right in front of the Wawa there.
All right, then I'm okay with the lieu of then. Okay, I just wanted to have a discussion about it.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, anyone else like to challenge or ask questions on the waiver requests at this time?
Yeah, Mr. Kisbeck, I did have a few items.
Okay, Councilman Tothmajian, go ahead.
Thank you. The fence, I think was mentioned as part of the waiver, or we're not sure because there is a fence. What type of fence is behind that property at this point?
It's a wooden stockade fence.
Does it, does it justify as a privacy fence, right? Because that property abuts apartments.
Correct.
So, would it maybe behoove us to put maybe a more improved privacy fence versus this wooden stockade? Now, if I remember correctly, I think it was beat up pretty good. So if you're looking for this waiver, but are you looking maybe to at least create some more privacy for those residents back there?
Yes. Is that something that we could work with Russ on as well as that item?
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah, I don't think that's objectionable on our part. Is if the township desires a type of fence that provides more adequate screening or privacy, I think we're willing to do that.
All right.
I think what we'd be interested in, excuse me, Ed, may I interrupt you there? What we'd be interested in would be, as Ed said, something, a nicer fence. Possibly they have those PVC fences or even the metal slat fences. But more importantly, in conjunction with that, I don't know if it's there or not, but we certainly would be interested in having shrubbery putting along there to isolate the sound from the apartments, from the commercial end of it. I think that would be an important part of what we'd be looking to have done at that point, since there's no berms.
Agreed.
And I think we can commit to that.
Okay, Russ, you got that? Russ, you're going to be doing a lot of work on this.
Thank you. And then in addition, is there access? I know when this application came before us previously, we spoke of some type of access for those individuals that wanted to walk from those apartments. Is there access available?
I mean, yes, there is access. There's no dedicated path from the residential and the apartments, but there is access.
Okay. And then can you just answer the addition that's on the plan? I'm assuming, is that the loading dock on the side?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yep, okay. What is the intention for loading of the retail space? I mean, I know there's a dock there, but is there sufficient space for a truck to be parallel to that building to be able to unload?
Oh, are you saying for the retail or for the grocer?
For the retail.
For the
Right, 'cause
retail,
the grocer is the new loading dock that you're adding on, which makes
Correct.
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, with that, the fact that you're adding that on, is there sufficient space for the retail space that's in the back, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have a isolated loading dock like you're building for the grocery. So is there sufficient space back there for loading and unloading?
Yes, there is. We have a dedicated loading zone in the back there. The trucks would come in off street roads, circle around the back, unload right there. It's a furniture showroom, so they're not doing constant deliveries and, massive trucks going in and out of there. They would stock the store and then they would continue on their way out the back of the property and then exit.
Yeah, and that would be the one comment that I would make for clarity is if somebody is buying a piece of furniture in the store, my understanding of Ashley's operations is that piece of furniture would be shipped from a different warehouse. So it's not the case that you're dealing with a tenant who is going to require regular unloading and loading of furniture to the rear.
I realize that, but you still have furniture that's being delivered to that store for display purposes or whatever
Yes.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay. And then can someone speak to was there a traffic study completed?
We have a report from our traffic engineer. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we do have a report from there, Ed.
Okay. I think that's all I had. That's all I had.
Okay, any other questions later on, you can ask them anytime, for sure. Anyone else? Gentlemen?
I've got some questions about the parking situation.
All right, Jesse?
Is a variance being requested for the parking?
No.
But the parking calculations show that you're short, correct?
Right.
No, the parking is a pre-existing non-conforming condition of which we are actually adding a significant number of spaces. So if you look at the parking, there's 434, I believe, on site. And if you were just taking a look, technically speaking, about what would be required based on the additional space of 847 square feet, we need to add 6 more spaces probably. We're providing over 100 new spaces, and that's, of course, in addition to the reciprocal easement agreement we have with Form.
Okay, great, thank you.
Why did I have you short by 48 spaces? How did I get that number?
I believe that is correct.
I didn't hear that. It cut out. I'm sorry.
I said I had it calculated at 48 spaces, you were shy. But I can't find it right now as I speak to you, but that's what I had it
That sounds
calculated.
about right, Ed.
Yeah, I don't think we are fully compliant, technically speaking, as if this was a new user, but we are adding what I can say from a legal standpoint, significantly more than we would be required to add based on the existing conditions.
So you have more spaces based on it being non-conforming, and you're adding additional to that. Is that what you're saying? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. Okay. I know I had it 48. Okay. Gentlemen, anything else? All right, let's go into then, all right, we discussed the waivers that you're requesting, and let me continue if I may. You have to understand I have two presentations, one the original one, the second one, so I have to, go a little slower here. Make sure I cover everything. I guess general comments on there would be, let's go stormwater management, I guess, let's go to that first. That's section E. Is there any questions on that at all, stormwater management?
No.
So you're in compliance, were you asking for a waiver for E2 by any chance?
No, we don't have any waivers identified under
Okay,
stormwater.
all right, so then we're good there. You talked about the shade trees. How about the traffic land development application for the traffic safety? This is Norm Mueller. He's our police department, and he feels that everything is, make sure I have this right. Cannot foresee any traffic issues at this time. That was his comments. And then Bucks County Conservation, you're in adequate compliance with conservation. Here we go. And then we're at the TPD, which is Traffic Planning and Design. Of course, you have number one is you're going to have a highway occupancy permit. And number two, on land development comments, we support a waiver of traffic study. So you're going to do a traffic study, is that right? And give us a report on the PM peak hour trips? You're going to submit,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
have you done that yet?
No. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, we requested a waiver from the traffic study, and I believe they agreed with that waiver.
Yeah, but in addition to that, or in lieu of that, I think our traffic engineer asked for you to give us a engineer's report on what the PM peak hour trips would be for both those type of uses. I think you would go to the engineering booklet, I forget what it's called nowadays, but there's a booklet that the Traffic Impact Fee Advisory Committee uses, and all engineers, traffic engineers use to calculate the PM peak hour trips. Do you know what I'm speaking of? Hello?
I'm here.
Sorry, the ITE.
That's it, the ITE, that's exactly, trip manual, yes, that's correct.
This is I haven't seen this revised letter from those guys, so I was unaware of that. I'm sorry.
All right, this is from July 6th, so that's okay, but I'm saying you will certainly, you will comply with that request,
We will I think that's a comment that we'll comply with, that's correct.
okay?
The traffic statement, right.
Exactly. All right, that's the information I have, gentlemen. Do you have any other comments? Do you have any comments at all from the council members, other than what was presented at this time?
As far as this last issue with the trip count study, traffic statement, would that be subject to an impact fee?
Yes. If there is
I
an
don't think so.
increase, if there's an increase in the number of trips and the number of PM peak trips, then an increase or an additional traffic impact fee would be assessed.
Okay.
Based on what the traffic engineer has told me in casual conversation, he believes that the combined number of trips for the grocery store and the furniture store would be fewer than the number of trips that were being generated by the Kmart. So I don't know that we should anticipate an impact fee, but again, if one is determined to be appropriate, the applicant will pay it. They have no choice.
Right.
to do so.
I think also since he's. I
My
think-
question though is the Kmart's been gone for several years now. I mean, is it appropriate, and just for my own information, is it appropriate to compare it to the Kmart, or is it appropriate to compare it to what's been there for several years, which is nothing? It's been a vacant building.
Yeah, but
So there's
since
been no
there's
traffic.
no additional construction that's being done that I know of,
Yeah,
it would not be subject to an impact fee because the building is existing,
Not
has been
built.
existing.
Okay.
Yes, as Mr. Kisselback's saying, there's been no intervening use. So the prior use, assuming, whatever the conditions were at that time, the prior owner would have been assessed, whether it was an impact fee or whether it was prior to our impact fee ordinance. But some calculation and assessment would have been made at that time. The fact that it's been empty, certainly you're correct. It should not, the number of trips, one would assume, have gone down, but we don't treat it as vacant land. We treat it as based on what the last use of the property was.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Pizzo.
Certainly.
Okay. We have it from there. All right, gentlemen, we have that. Now I'm going to ask, at this point, is there any other comments for council members? Not hearing any additional comments, I'm going to ask to call for a public comment on this proposed subdivision and land development preliminary and final in front of us. Is there anyone who would like to make any comments on this at this time?
Yes,
And
and
if you can identify yourself for the public record, please.
I will. My name is Michael Landis. I am the attorney for the adjoining property owner, Hyman Corman Co. And we do have some comments on the application. I sent to Mr. Pizzo earlier today some documents that I hope he shared with council. They included copies of Corman's deeds to their property for record purposes, just to show that Corman is the adjoining property owner and does have standing to participate in the proceedings. Mr. Pizzo, would you have the ability to pull up that second aerial that I sent you, that it could be on the screen, that everyone could see it?
Certainly. Truck circulation aerial number 2?
No, it's actually, it's called Brookwood Aerial 2018, property lines marked.
Just one thing for point of clarification, and the township obviously has received the 2 deeds. It was not, however, necessary to establish standing in the sense, again, that your participation in the hearing is not as a party, but as a member of the public commenting during public comment. Again, the township recognizes that Hyman Corman Company does own the adjacent portion of the shopping center, and that's why all of the individuals who are on the screen at the moment are on the screen at the moment. But I just didn't want the record to indicate something other than these are comments the township is receiving during the public comment portion of this hearing.
And that's my understanding too, Mr. Pizzo. I just wanted to establish who we are.
Very good. And also, you are correct. All of you may not have been admitted into the meeting as of the time that council was made aware that both of your emails of earlier today and all of the attachments attached there too, your email from 3/12 and your email from 3/53. All of that information has been provided to the Township Council in advance of this evening's hearing.
Thank you.
And I believe
Have it up, right?
we're now looking at Brookwood aerial 2018 property lines, at least the public here in Bensalem is.
And so, assuming everyone can see that, that shows how the two pieces of property fit together, the Corman and the Bensalem MZL parcels. And as you can see, Corman owns a strip of land out in front of the MZL parcel, some of which is located within the right-of-way. But I thought it important that council just have a general understanding of where the property lines are. The other thing that we submitted to Mr. Pizzo is a letter from Mr. Jackson of Boucher and James, and he summarizes fairly succinctly what comments we have regarding the application. And I would just note that Mr. Jackson is available. He's been admitted into the meeting. If there are any questions that council would like to ask him, he's certainly here and available to answer those questions. So with regard to our concerns, there's really three principal areas of concern. One are the utilities. Right now, there is a water and a gas line that runs from Humeville Road behind the Corman piece of property and provides service to the former Kmart building. And again, I have Arnold Lurie, who has been admitted to the meeting and has firsthand knowledge of what I'm about to say. So if council has any questions they'd like to ask him, he's here. In the past, on several occasions, when there has been an issue with the water line, in order for the maintenance and repair work to be done to the water line, it requires that water to the Kmart building be shut off. And that's happened as recently as 2015. There was an issue behind what is now the Crafty Crab. Again, in August 2014, there was some work done on a main shutoff valve. In November 2013, there was a repair to the water main behind the China Sun restaurant. So there's a history of service interruptions to the Kmart building because of the way the utilities are laid out. And Mr. Jackson, in his report, has outlined some of the health and safety concerns that go with that when you have a grocery store, which is a volume user of water that uses water for a variety of purposes. And from reviewing the plans, it's our understanding that the applicant will be running sanitary sewer to the street road corridor, where there is also water and gas service available. So we think it makes sense for the applicant to run water and gas from the Kmart building directly out to the street road corridor because they're already doing work out there. And we think it solves a problem for them. Because they're already running lines out there, we don't think it's an undue hardship to the applicant. So that's our utility issue. And again, as I indicated, Mr. Lurie is here. If you have any questions about what the service interruptions were or what they consisted of or how long they lasted. The other issue...
Just one question in that regard, Mr. Landis. The service interruptions then would not only have been to the Kmart, but to the entirety of the shopping center, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
That is correct. The second issue is a truck circulation issue. The plans that have been submitted omit any depiction of truck access and circulation entering the applicant's parcel when traveling east towards I-95, i.e. crossing over oncoming traffic on Street Road. And they also omit any depiction of truck access exiting the MZL parcel to go east towards 95, again, crossing a lane of traffic on Street Road. And essentially what MZL is proposing for truck access would be shown on the two aerials that I sent to Mr. Pizzo and which hopefully you have access to. There's a truck aerial number 1 and a truck aerial number 2. They were prepared by Mr. Jackson, and they show how trucks are going to be accessing the MZL parcel, because right now what you have is a right-in, right-out only intersection or entranceway on the MZL parcel. And we think that presents a significant safety concern with significant truck travel traveling through the shopping center, crossing pedestrian lanes of travel and multiple points. This is certainly, hopefully, going to become a very busy center when the parcel next door gets developed. And we think that the truck circulation patterns that are proposed based on the current plans that you see create significant safety issues. And we think the potential solution here is to turn that right-in, right-out intersection into a fully functioning four-way in and out intersection. And all it would require is restriping, because there is no curbing in the area. That is painted as a right-in, right-out intersection. And with some striping changes, that gives trucks a way to get out of the MZL parcel onto Street Road in a way that does not make them traverse the Corman parcel. And not only is it a safety concern, but it's also a maintenance concern, because trucks damage property. And Corman should not really have the burden of increased maintenance costs because of truck traffic on the MZL parcel. My only other comment on truck access is to the rear, and I think this comment was raised by a council member previously. The retail portion, when you if you look at the TPD review letter, item number 5, they ask the applicant to show truck access and turning behind the retail portion of the building. And it's not shown, and the reason it's not shown is because it's a very narrow area back there. And so that creates problems too. So our principal concern here again is trying to get a better way for trucks to get in and out, and we think that can be accomplished changing the right in and the right out intersection into a fully functioning intersection. And we think it might also, the township might want to consider, whether or not that intersection should become signalized. That's certainly something, that would, you would ultimately be the owner of the traffic signal, so that's ultimately your call, and it's PennDOT's call too as to whether or not to grant the request. But that's something that you might want to consider in terms of the overall development of the parcel. And then stormwater, we had a couple comments on stormwater. Primarily, we wanted to make sure that roof leaders and roof drains connected directly to the underground system and would not discharge to grade, so that there was not ice formation issues that created a safety concern. And the other thing that we think would be appropriate here, since all of the stormwater on the MZL parcel drains across or under the Corman parcel towards Humeville Road, is that the applicant enter into an agreement with Corman that they would share stormwater maintenance expenses for the existing system to the extent that they are increasing the load. So, and Mr. Eishold's letter also suggests that council consider either delaying approval of the application or attaching conditions to the approval of the application that would address these comments that we've made. I'll finish up real quickly here. Regarding parking, they're currently below the number of spaces required by ordinance. Even with the development, they're still below. Corman would reserve its concerns and objections if the applicant were to come back to you at a future point and want to enlarge some of those out parcels to add additional square footage that could make the parking circumstances even worse. And, just in terms of context, Bensalem has been a part of the Corman has been part of the Bensalem community for 4 generations now. They built Neshaminy Valley in the 1960s. They have the Neshaminy Valley Shopping Center. They built the Neshaminy Mall. They have the Brookwood Shopping Center, which is this application. And their headquarters are in Trevose, which is also Bensalem Township. They have experience in retail, office, and residential uses. They have roots in the community for 4 generations. They've owned this particular property since the 1960s when it was the Buell Airfield. And Corman would like to see the development of the MZL parcel proceed in a way that is harmonious with and compatible with their adjoining parcel. And that's really what's driving our concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. Turn this on. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the proposed developer on these 2 properties. Would you like to respond? There's, I think, several things that were brought up, the running water and gas from Street Road to the Kmart, the truck circulation patterns, the rear part of the property with the truck signalization onto Street Road, stormwater directly to the, so it's not surface water, as well as parking levels are a little bit below the required amount. Those items are what I had gleaned from your presentation. And so would you like to respond to that, Mr. McGinnis? Is there anything you'd like to respond to?
Yes, Mr. President, briefly, and I think I'll take them in reverse order as I wrote them down, and we'll have Mr. Riggle jump in from a technical standpoint at the conclusion of this. I would note as a preliminary matter that council is aware that this site came before them a couple years ago with Jeff Brown ShopRite. Our client thought we had a great tenant, was very excited to bring a number of jobs and a great user to the community. We think we've identified that again in the form of 2 tenants. And this is, our opportunity, we think, to fill a longstanding vacancy that everyone in the community is aware about. So while I understand Mr. Landis's concerns from Corman's perspective, we think that this is a great user in this location, 2 great tenants, and we're looking forward to it from that perspective. With regard to the additional pad that he mentioned from parking and reserving rights, obviously that's not the subject of this application. In the event that there was an additional pad that had some impact on parking calculations, of course, Corman has the ability to reserve the right to argue that we're not compliant and would have to secure zoning. That is not the case here, and I believe Mr. Landis even acknowledges that we are compliant from a parking standpoint. With regard to the roof drainage comment to the underground system, we are already doing that, so that comment is addressed, and Mr. Riggle can correct me if I see a finger raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I would disagree. We're actually, I would agree with you. We are running the roof leaders underground, but we are increasing the amount of green area on the site. So it would actually reduce the amount of runoff of stormwater from, this parcel actually. So it would help the situation.
Right. With respect to a potential maintenance agreement, I can state for the record and in front of council that I have corresponded with Mr. Landis. Our clients are willing to have those conversations, certainly with Hyman Corman, and we are willing to discuss that. Of course, anything like this requires adequate due diligence, so we would request that not be a condition of approval, but I can represent to council that we're willing to engage Corman with respect to some sort of shared maintenance obligation insofar as stormwater is concerned. With respect to truck circulation, I would presume that the majority of trucks that are entering the site by making a left into the shopping center would likely access the shopping center through the turn-in, which is adjacent to the right-in, right-out only. I would also presume that the majority of trucks, insofar as they're required by Corman, are also accessing the site through that direction, and then theoretically traversing MZL's property to access the rear of the building. We are not suggesting to change that pattern. I would note that Mr. Worsta and TPD made no mention of any significant traffic safety hazards, because we don't believe there are any traffic safety or pedestrian safety hazards based upon that truck circulation pattern. And with respect to utilities, we are running one connection out to Street Road. Of course, that is completely different than running water and gas out to Street Road. My understanding is we've discussed this matter on site with both PICO and Aqua. We're attempting to utilize the existing infrastructure where it's appropriate. And it's my understanding, and again, I'll have Chris supplement this, but that both of those companies, both the utilities, did express that it is appropriate to hook in as it's currently situated. So that is what we're attempting to do. So I understand the comments raised by Mr. Landis, but I think we have adequate answers for all of the issues that are raised. And Mr. Riggle, please feel free to address any of those further.
No, I would agree regarding the utilities. I've had conversations, met on site with PICO and Aqua. The Aqua, I believe, will serve letter states in that letter that there's sufficient infrastructure in the back of the shopping center to supply these new tenants, and PICO said the same thing to me as well. So there's no issues with the infrastructure or anything out there that would really, make us connect to Street Road.
All right, Mr. Landis, I'll have you have the last word.
I think on utilities, it's a service interruption issue. Whenever there's a problem with the line, whether it's a Corman tenant, water to their building is going to get shut down. And I don't think there are many grocery store operators who want to be losing their water on a periodic basis for any length of time, given the volume and purposes that they use water for.
Well,
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Mr. Pizzo said that if the water's shut down, then also the restaurants in your area would be shut down for water, and restaurants don't want to have water either, do they?
Yeah, no, they don't.
Okay.
Well, the issue is there's a problem on our parcel that requires work, that requires us to turn the water off on their parcel. And I would think that as a tenant and grocery store operator, you would want your own supply line so that if there's a problem with an adjoining tenant on a different parcel, that's not going to affect your water service.
Okay, but that seems like that doesn't seem like a safety issue or anything. It's a preference for the tenant. Where they want.
I think it's the reason I'm emphasizing the safety issue is because with a grocery store, they use water for sanitation, they use water for food preparation, they use water for refrigeration and cooling. And to suddenly you lose your water for any period of time because of a problem on somebody else's property, that can create significant issues for an operator, and it can create health and safety issues.
Well, they could bring in water too if they had.
They could.
Okay.
I'm not saying
Same argument for the restaurants in the Corman property or the gym that's right next door that would lose water, including losing the ability to sanitize all of the athletic equipment in the middle of a pandemic.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Mr. Lurie knows the answer to that question or not.
Mr. Pizzo?
Mr. Landis, let me ask you a question. There was never a problem with this when Kmart was there or other stores were there, and it sounds like a threat that you can close their water off at any time. I don't like to hear things like that because there should be no reason to be threatening to shut somebody off. There's an empty store there that needs to be filled in Bensalem, and we should be working together as good neighbors to make this happen. You guys should meet together, try to figure out what's what, and try to make this a good move so it benefits the people in Bensalem Township. I know Corman's been there forever, and they've been good to the community. Now it's time to get that store opened up and get it going for the people in the community.
Mr. Polari, there's no threat involved here. I am simply pointing out to council a problem with the way water and gas runs to the building. And I'm suggesting that this is an opportunity to fix that problem.
I
That's all.
understand, I
There's not a-
understand.
It's not a threat of any.
Listen,
of
I
any
understand,
type.
Mr. Landis, I understand what you're saying, but I just heard you, and I'm looking through the Zoom, and I'm looking right at your face. It's like, well, we might have to shut their water off. You better have a good reason to shut their water off. I mean, that sounds like a threat to me.
That is not a threat to the extent that anyone has interpreted it as a threat. I will state on the record that it is not a threat. I have pointed out that in the past, on several occasions, when there have been supply issues, by reason of making the repairs, water to the entire center has been shut off.
Okay, well, you warned them, but they met with Aqua and Pico and Aqua feel that that's sufficient supply.
Mr. Pazzo, do you have any comments on
If
this?
if the applicant decides to keep the existing water and gas line where it is, and council decides not to require them to run a new utility line to Street Road, Corbin will not be shutting off their water for any capricious reasons or anything like that. But the applicant should know that if there's a break in that line or some other work that needs to be done, water is going to be shut off to their store.
I think they would experience the same thing if they ran the water from Street Road. Would that be correct?
That they would, yes, but it would only affect their parcel.
All right, Mr.
That's all.
Pazzo?
I guess just to put a coda on the conversation, because the phrase safety was invoked in this conversation regarding water and gas. As has been properly pointed out during the conversation, both Aqua, the water service provider for the property, and Pico, the gas provider for the property, have provided will-serve letters. The township has them in their file saying that there's adequate capacity and the lines are capable of providing the service. The plans have been reviewed by the township fire marshal. The township plans have been reviewed by the township engineer. No one has suggested at this point that there's a safety issue in regard to those lines in general or those lines servicing the potential grocery store and potential furniture store, in addition to all of the other properties and businesses located on the two adjacent properties. And finally, as we go through the building permit phase of the project, should it get to that point, again, these things are constantly being reviewed. If there is in fact a safety issue, then that will have to be addressed at any point in time that it's identified by the township and its professionals. Until that time, what we're hearing, I would suggest, is this is a business decision as to whether a water line which had to be shut off on occasion 5, 6, and 7 years ago is something that the property owner or the potential tenants want to take into account as they decide how to serve their water and gas needs. But from the fact that we've talked and invoked the word safety several times, I want to make sure the record's clear that this has been reviewed, at least in the context of a land development application up to this point, and none of the review agencies have identified a safety issue in the way water and gas are proposed to provide service to this building.
Okay, Mr. Pazzo, are there any other comments that were sent in regarding this, any emails regarding this project?
We have comments regarding parking on Park Avenue, so I would say that that is not responsive to this application. And no, nothing else that I see that's been received by way of email. So there are no other public comments at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to close public comment at this time then. And gentlemen, I'm going to ask, we have a preliminary and a final land development in front of us, and I'd like to know what you would like to do. Would you like to make a motion in favor or deny it?
Mr. Kisselbeck, can I ask one final question before anything's put up of Mr. Landis?
Sure.
Mr. Landis, When we saw a prior application, I don't remember seeing these concerns or hearing these concerns. If I remember correctly, it was the parking. And now we're reviewing another plan and we're seeing some new concerns. And I guess my question to you is Corman against developing this property? And to my colleagues' points, Mr. Blair and Mr. Knowles, we are looking to develop this property to, I guess, abate an issue that the property is an eyesore. We want to fill it. And to your point, sir, the Corman's been around in Bensalem for 4 generations. And let me repeat, the Chamonix Valley Shopping Center, the Chamonix Mall, the Brookwood Shopping Center, the location over in Trevose. I do believe that Corman recognizes the challenge and also wants to fill space. It seems to me that every time a plan comes in front of us, that Corman wants to find ways to try to just to find a way to fight it.
That is not the case. If you hear what we're saying fix a utility problem, fix a truck access problem, and fix a stormwater problem. That's what we're saying. We're not saying that we don't want this property developed. As much as it's an eyesore for the township, it's an eyesore for Corman. The building is right next to their shopping center. And so it's not a question of we don't want anything there. We want something there that's harmonious and works well with what we have. And when Kmart was there, none of these issues were a problem. Kmart was a single big box user, not with a lot of traffic, and we got along well. The minute you start partitioning the space and bringing in different types of users, then it changes the equation a little bit, and it raises concerns that we didn't have with Kmart. Regarding the prior application, our principal concern was that the applicant tried to go directly to council without vetting any of these issues through the Planning Commission. And it turns out we were right.
Yeah.
Because it came before council, council granted the application, it was appealed on that issue, and the applicant withdrew the application. And they withdrew the application because they knew they should have gone to the Planning Commission in the first place. That's why you have that Planning Commission, so that you as a council member get a recommendation from someone who's already taken a look at the application. So I hope that's answered your question. I mean, Corman is not, opposed to the development of this parcel. There's a way to make it work. A grocer would be a great tenant there. We do have concerns about the retail portion because of truck access in the back. That's a potential problem. But when you had a single big box user, there were, a lot of these concerns just didn't come up.
No, and I recognize that, but I mean, you have to also recognize the fact that it's extremely difficult to find a tenant that's gonna want to fill a 100,000 square foot space in these days. And at some point we have to recognize the fact that it's going to have to be subdivided.
Okay, all right, since we talked about the Planning Commission, our Planning Commission did approve this project on July 22nd, 2020. And so if you're inclined, gentlemen, to put a motion on the floor. If not, I'll put a motion on the floor then. Then my motion would be that we accept.
Ed, I'll put a motion on the floor
All right,
that we have that we approve the preliminary and final land development for Bensalem MZL LLC, 1479 and 1837 Street Road, as presented and under Mr. Gantz's letter. The
wrong engineer there, Joe.
What's that?
Wrong engineer. Mr. Benner.
Oh, Benner, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Benner. Mr. Gantz's replacement, Mr. Benner, I'm sorry. So under his letter, Mr. Benner's letter, Russell Benner's letter, the 20 are will comply. The ones that aren't will comply is number 5 will be a partial waiver. Number 13 will be a waiver. Number 17, as discussed earlier, will be a waiver. Number 18 would be a waiver. Number 19 would be a waiver in lieu of, as determined by our engineer with the trees. 21 will be a waiver in reference to the sidewalks, but paid in lieu of, determined by our engineer. Number 22 would be a waiver. Number 24 would be a waiver
Partial.
that will also be determined by a partial waiver with the curb islands not in the interior, but the curb islands around the properties of Krispy Kreme and the Philly Pretzel Factory is worked out with our engineer. And then on number 26, there'll be a partial waiver with no curb islands unless determined that necessary changes are made to the lights per Mr. Benner's consultation with the applicant. And number 27 would be a waiver. And that would be it as far as that. Is there anything else I should add, Mr. Pizzo, for the approval?
No, I don't believe so, Mr. Knowles. I think you got all of the salient parts. Obviously, in those instances where you were discussing fees in lieu of landscaping, in those instances, and in all instances, the township engineer will have the final say in what landscaping may be required and at what location as to those various numbered items. And to the extent that the applicant is unable to meet the entirety of the requirements per the township ordinance, they would pay a fee in lieu of whatever portions they're not providing. I believe that's what you said. I just wanted to reiterate that because it is applicable to several of the waivers that were granted.
Okay, and I'll add Mr. Pizzo's clarification to my motion. And if there's a impact fee to be determined and paid that the applicant will be willing to pay, it doesn't seem like there's going to be, but if it's determined that it's owed for an increase, then they will be willing to pay that fee also. That's my motion. If it's, I guess that's my motion.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor.
Can we just add, just real quick, two items to that motion?
Before we vote on the motion, don't forget we have the fence that Mr. Tokomajian had brought up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And one other point, Mr. Kisselbeck, that the applicant had agreed to a good faith effort in working with Corman in regards to a shared maintenance agreement related to the stormwater?
Yes, and to that end, we would ask that the applicant, or if I'm understanding both Mr. Knowles and Mr. Tognagin, and I believe Mr. Sloan was in the process of providing the second, that yes, the applicant will work in good faith with Hyman Corman Company to arrive at a comprehensive stormwater management and operation agreement for the entirety of the site. I should note, however, that for the portion of the site that is subject to this evening's preliminary and final land development approval, a stormwater maintenance and operation agreement with the township pursuant to our NPDES requirements by DEP, the applicant would be required to enter into such an agreement anyway as to the township and is it MZL for that portion of the site. So we will have a stormwater operation agreement at least for half of the site. Hopefully both sides can come to an agreement and that can spread out over to the entirety of the site.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'll also add Mr. Tognagion's point that the fencing along the back will be improved per our engineer. Any improvement in the fencing, either quality of fencing, the height of the fencing that can improve the barrier between the apartment residents there. And also, as Mr. Kisselback said, any shrubbery along there that could help with the residents' sound and bordering that would also be determined by our engineer, and the applicant would be following up on that request also.
All right, so we have a motion, Joe Knowles, and we do have a second by Jesse Sloan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for both presentations, and good luck to everyone. And I think it's be an asset to everyone in Bensalem, Corman,
Thank
as well as MZL Corporation. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Give me a second to check everything out. Just take a second to allow the folk from that hearing to check out.
Okay, next on the agenda will be agenda item number 6, and that is Trumark Financial Credit Union, consideration of signing an agreement. And Mr. Pfizer, I think we can take this and.
Certainly. Just give me 1 second to
Okay?
get everything back in order here.
Hey, John.
As to item number 6, these are the Land Development Improvements Agreement and the Stormwater Best Management Practices Operation and Maintenance Agreement for the Trumark Financial Credit Union property in the Glenview Corporate Center. As council will recall, some time ago, you approved the land development application for the construction of a Trumark Financial Credit Union building on Tillman Drive in the Glenview Corporate Center. These are the development agreements associated with that project. They have been prepared by my office. They have been signed and returned by the applicant, together with the required escrows and fees associated with the project and the agreement. They are in an order acceptable for your consideration and approval this evening.
Is Tillman and Glenview together? Is it?
Yes.
I thought they were separate. I thought they were across the street from each other.
I think this is on Tillman Drive, yes.
All right, so you're right on that, right? You got that?
Yeah, 3420 Tillman Drive.
Okay, gentlemen. This is a fairly normal thing we do at a regular scheduled meetings, so your pleasure.
I will, I'll make the motion that we approve the land development improvement agreement for Trumark Financial Credit Union, tax parcel 02-035-001-001.
All right, motion on the floor.
Second.
I don't know who got second on that one.
Joe can have it, that's all right.
Who did?
Polari.
Joe Polari, okay. Motion a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Moving. We did not, Joe, I'm sorry. We did A and B on that. Is that correct? The land development improvement agreement as well as storm?
Yes, they were both done as part of the same motion.
Okay, fine. Okay, then move on to agenda item number 7. This is a consideration of resolution of 537 Pennsylvania Sewage Facility Act. This is for a new building on a existing parcel of land. This is identified as PennDOT. It's a salt storage building, and it's located on Neshaminy Boulevard.
Russ, do you want to take this, or do you want me to take it?
Russ, you take it.
Yeah, I got it. Essentially, this is a planning module for a facility that's actually been constructed. The facility is the PennDOT vehicle wash building. It currently has electric, water, and gas. This, typically being a PennDOT facility, doesn't go through a land development process. However, since they are having a wash facility, which will be connected into the sanitary sewer system, that it will need, in fact, a planning module approval. This is going back and forth between PennDOT, their consultant, DEP, and then lately with the township. So tonight, what's in front of you is the approval for the planning module. I believe it's a component 4A for this facility. It has 9 EDUs. It was determined that there's adequate capacity for this. So the question before council is to approve component 4A, or consideration of approval of component 4A for the planning modules, and then executing of that document.
Thank you. Gentlemen, your pleasure.
Russ, do you know why this is more than a year after the building was constructed?
Yeah, because I think that originally there was some, I don't want to call it disagreement, but misunderstanding between PennDOT and their consultant who did this building and subsequently DP. And there was a lot of back and forth between DP and PennDOT before PennDOT finally agreed that yes, a planning module is required, and yes, you have to go in front of the township and get that approval. I think PennDOT, I mean, lack of a better way of saying it, PennDOT thought they didn't need to do this.
But it was done right, what was done, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
On the actual DEP form, the component 4A, number 16, I'm just trying to figure this out. Are there or are there not inconsistencies that have to be addressed here?
No, I don't think there's any inconsistencies that have to be addressed.
Okay. It just
And
looks like that box might be checked by mistake.
No, it said, yes, is the plan consistent with municipal, and you're talking about 16 or 14?
16.
Has a waiver of the sewage facility planning requirements been requested for the residual tract of this subdivision? No. The inconsistency is item number 14 too. It says, is this plan consistent with the municipal official sewage facilities plan? And the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, no, I understand, but it says, 16, if you answer no, to describe the inconsistency. It might be an issue with the form, because I couldn't figure out if there was something that was supposed to be here or not.
I see what you're saying, Mr. Sloan. Is proposed waiver consistent with the applicable ordinances? I'm not quite sure why that box is checked.
That was my thought.
But in any event, as Mr. Benner properly stated, at least from a land development perspective, because this is a PennDOT facility, it falls outside of our purview to require formal land development. The building does, however, have to be constructed to local code. That's correct, isn't it, Mr. Benner?
Yes.
So the building would have been constructed in accordance with township building codes. As to the Act 537 sewage planning resolution that you're being asked to approve, and again, had this gone through land development, you'd be asked to do the same thing. In this case, what we're certifying is that the building is consistent with our sewage facilities plan, and to the extent that it's going to be serviced by public sewer in an area where the township anticipates and has already designated there would be public sewer, it complies. So that, at the end of the day, is really all we're certifying with this resolution.
It makes sense to me. I mean, you
That's
have,
fair. Thank you, Mr.
it
Pizzo.
makes sense to me. You have yes answered, is the plan consistent with the municipal official storage facility plan? They answer yes. Has a waiver of the storage facility planning requirement been requested? No, they didn't need to request a waiver. So I don't understand the inconsistency. I don't.
We ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
I'll make a motion that we accept the resolution, Pennsylvania Sewage Facilities Act 4A, executed for the PennDOT salt storage building as presented.
I'll second.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor, second. Any additional discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Moving on to agenda item number 8. This is an escrow release, excuse me. And this is the Samarpan Hindu Temple. This is release number 3, and this is in the amount of $48,523.80. Mr. Benner?
Yeah, we reviewed the request by the applicant. Quentin went out, did a site inspection, make sure the items that being requested were put in to a satisfactory degree. They were, and we're requesting the release of the $48,523.80.
I'll make the motion that we accept and approve the escrow release number 3 in the amount of $48,523.80 for the Samarkand Hindu Temple located at 2746 Mechanicsville. Correct. Yes, sir.
I'll second the motion. I'll second it. Top agents, the first.
Myself. Vote aye.
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 Against, abstentions, okay, unanimous again. All right, and we'll go on to agenda item number 9. This is consideration of reduction of a permit fee. This is the Bensalem Township School District, Cornwall Elementary School. This is located at 2215 Uneville Road. And this is in a total would be $11,953. We're requesting a 50%, or offering them a 50%. Okay, I'm sorry. The amount of this request was $11,953. We're offering a 50% reduction, which would be normal, and that's at $59,705. Wait a minute. I guess that last thing really threw me off course.
There, so.
$5,976.50. That's what we're offering them as far as a reduction. A 50% reduction. Gentlemen, you have any comments on this? I ask for a motion to be put on the floor then?
So moved.
I'll second.
That was it? Okay, all those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Vote aye.
That's the funniest sentence I've ever heard. Okay,
Did you want me to talk longer, Mr.
Are
Kisselbeck? I can
are
do
you
that.
complaining we don't have that many questions?
I love that.
Through it.
I love that motion. That was the best motion I've heard.
We can bicker about it for a little bit if you want.
All right, agenda item number 10, we have a consideration, this is a resolution changing the name of Warren Avenue to the Charles Elsie Way. And I'll read this if I may, and it says, the resolution of the Township of Bensalem, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, renaming Warren Avenue to Charles Elsie Way. Whereas the Township of Bensalem of Bucks County, Pennsylvania is a township of the second class organized and operating in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And whereas the Township of Bensalem, in the exercise of its lawful powers, is vested with the responsibility, among other things, to operate and maintain a system of public streets and roads within the territorial borders of the township for the health, safety, and general welfare of the township and its citizens. And whereas there exists within the township a certain public street currently known and identified as Warren Avenue, and whereas on July 26, 2020, Charles Valton Elsie, beloved husband, devoted father, and community leader within the Township of Bensalem, passed away at the age of, I'm going to say 82, because it's left blank, and I could be corrected on that, but I think I'm fairly close to that. And whereas Charles moved to Bensalem at the age of 3 and lived here for the remainder of life, having been educated in the Bensalem School District and having graduated from Bensalem High School in 1957. And whereas Charles devoted much of his, what are you figuring that out, Joe?
I'm figuring it out right now.
I knew you were
Mr.
doing
Elsie.
that.
Thank you.
Whereas Charles devoted much of his life to serving both his neighborhood, community, and the township at large, both as the president of the Lynn Park Civic Association, a position he held for 25 years, and as a deacon of the Lincolnia Tabernacle Christian Center in Trevose. And whereas it is the desire of the mayor and the township council to commemorate Mr. Elsie's lifetime of service to his community and the entire township by renaming Warren Avenue to Charles Elsie Way. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Township Council of Township Council of Bensalem does hereby rename the entirety of Warren Avenue to Charles Elsie Way, and the administration of the township is hereby authorized and direction to take any and all actions necessary to effectuate the purpose of this resolution. And this is adopted today, the 24th of August, 2020. Gentlemen, that's the resolution before us. I'd like to have a motion on the floor to accept this
Can I
resolution.
make a comment first?
Absolutely.
Mr. Elzey was one of the finest human beings I've ever met in my life. It's well-deserved on this, for this. He worked hard for his community and for this township, and he was a fantastic man, had many wonderful conversations with him. So I'd like to make a motion, we pass this as presented.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else like to make a comment?
I'd like to make a comment that Mr. Elzey was a tremendous leader in his community, tremendous man, very spiritual man, and he provided Bensalem with some of the finest student athletes that the school had. I remember I played football at Egan, but at the same time, one of the Elzeys played linebacker at Bensalem, and they were all great athletes and great students and great representations of our community. So I think this is more than deserved, and it's an honor to even be considering it. I'll second Mr. Plairy's motion if you want to call it.
Okay, and we,
Mr. Knowles, I'd add on to that legacy continued even later. I know that my brother played football at Bensalem High School with, another member of the Elzey family, was a good friend of his. So I'm happy to see this go through.
If you got hit by one of them, you knew it.
okay, and we're kind enough, we have Bishop White, Kenneth White from the Laconia Tabernacle Church, and that's exactly where Charles Elzey was a deacon. And I'm going to have, and we're lucky, I made him aware we were making this resolution tonight, and I didn't realize he would be here, but I appreciate it. And we would like you to come up and make a few comments if you'd be kind enough.
Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to say to Ms. Kizelback and to the board, thank you so much for what you have done. It's going to be a great help to the neighborhood. As you stated, Ms. Elzey was very actively involved in Trevose in Lynn Park for many, many, many years. And I'm sure this will make his family's heart glad, and also the members of his church and the members of the Lynn Park neighborhood also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bishop White. We appreciate that. Anyone else like to make a comment, gentlemen? I'll just add to it that I knew Mr. Elzey as a man, as a leader of his community, again, being the president of the Lynn Park Association. He was certainly part of his community and everything he did. He served on a number of boards in Bensalem Township, and as well as he was a spiritual man and a deacon in his church. And so he was certainly an example to all of us, and what we should all aspire to be. So I think we'll be real happy to have this be part of a recognition of Bensalem in perpetuity, and everyone will know what that name is, and we'll certainly pass the name on to our friends and family also for everything he's done for us. Thank you.
Mr. Kiselback, also I know that unfortunately Mayor DiGirolamo couldn't be here this evening, but certainly during the mayor's many years as mayor of the community, he had the opportunity to work hand in hand with Mr. Elzey for the betterment of his community and the entirety of Bensalem. So I know the mayor would want to acknowledge your presence here this evening, and certainly to give his support to council adopting this resolution this evening.
Okay, gentlemen, so we have a motion on the floor.
I had a second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. I'm sorry. What's up? I don't know. You have to ask him. Who was the first on the motion?
Mr. Plairy.
It was Joe, and then you were second it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 11, we have another resolution. And I'm just going to read the top part of this, and if Mr. Pizer would like to elaborate on it, we'll do it that way. And this is a consideration of a resolution authorizing the condemnation of a tax map parcel 2-16-262, as well as 2-16-243, as well as 2-16-264. This is for the purpose of creation and maintenance of a recreational facility and open space within the township. And the beginning of this resolution reads that the resolution of the Township of Bensalem authorizing the condemnation of the certain real estate properties, and we identified the tax map parcels numbers already, and as more particularly described herein below, for the acquisition of the township open space lands and recreation lands, as well as the improvements and facility related thereto. Mr. Paiser, I'm going to have you elaborate on what we're doing here.
Certainly. And it's probably an appropriate time, before I go into the discussion of the item itself, to make the public aware that the council did meet in an executive session on August 19 for approximately 90 minutes. Present for the executive session were the members of council, the mayor, me, and for a portion of that executive session, Tom Tockley, the director of the Bensalem Rescue Squad. The two issues that were discussed at the executive session are both items that are on the agenda for this evening. The current discussion of the condemnation, which I'll go into in greater detail in a moment, as well as item 12 having to do with the referendum question for the rescue squad. No official action was taken in regard to either of those actions during the executive session, but as you can see by their presence on the agenda, official action is anticipated this evening in regard to both. That being said, the property at issue that Mr. Kisselback described, and as it's described on the agenda, is property that is currently known as the Trifecta Sporting Club, and for a goodly number of years prior to that was the United German-Hungarian Club located on Bristol Road. It came to the township's attention in several months ago that the property had been put up for sale, and in fact an agreement of sale had been entered into between the owners of Trifecta and a local builder for the purposes of that nearly 18 acres of land being converted into single-family housing. When the administration became aware, we notified council, and subsequently the township has been working over the past several months to determine whether it was feasible for the township to move in and stop the development of that property through the use of the township's powers of eminent domain, specifically for the purpose of preserving the property both as recreation facilities and open space to serve the township, obviously in its entirety, but particularly to make sure that there was open space and some recreation facility remaining in the Trevose area of the township. So to that end, the township undertook an appraisal of the property and has pursued and reviewed the various aspects of the condemnation and what would be involved. Council was briefed on the status last week at the executive session, and based on all of the conversations that have been taking place up to this point, the administration has prepared and is presenting to the five of you this resolution, which, if adopted, would result in the condemnation of the entire almost 18 acres of land that make up the Trifecta Sporting Club, again, for the purposes of open space preservation and for providing recreation facilities and appurtenances to the citizens of the township. If anyone has any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but the resolution is in a form acceptable for your consideration and approval this evening.
All right, gentlemen. Any comments?
I'd like to note that, we've met now, maybe 3 or 4 times on this issue as a council. And we all together are of a like mind in pushing that, moving forward with this idea. I know that the residents of Trevose have very little when it comes to the use of public lands and township facilities, parks back there, and we all collectively thought that this was a great idea for the residents of that area to, number one, provide them with this land, and number two, prevent more development in that area, which would only add to the traffic congestion along Bristol Road. So that's the comment that I wanted to put out there.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, I agree with Mr. Sloan's comments, and also that, that the local builder had presented a plan that we kind of were not happy with, or seeing for the first time, but there was a situation where we realized that legally he would probably at some point be able to build residential homes there at a certain amount anyway that we wouldn't have the ability to control. And we wanted to take the opportunity to make sure that there's 18 acres up there. Bristol Road's already heavy traffic, besides the fact that Mr. Sloan's comments are correct, that they need the recreation up in that area. The kids need the soccer fields. There's no open space. There's not much open space and not much recreation or parks in that area, and they certainly deserve that. And I don't think Bristol Road can handle any more traffic up and down that a residential property would create. So we have spoken about this in detail, and we seriously consider the options, and we think that it's worth it for the overall community to get this thing done.
I also agree with Mr. Knowles and Mr. Sloan, Mr. Gisselback, and unless I don't want to take anything from Mr. Polari, but I would like to put up the motion at this time, unless there's any public comment on it, Mr. Gisselback.
Do I have a comment on it?
No, public comment. I wanted to make sure I didn't put the motion up prior to if there was any public comment prior to making the motion.
Well, Mr. Polari, you'd like to add something before we put a motion on the floor?
No, he took my thunder, so I'll step aside and second it.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Polari.
Okay, and I agree with the sentiments that this certainly is a worthwhile endeavor for Bensalem Township. We always need to have more fields for our children, and it's certainly something that I think everyone will be pleased with in the future of Bensalem, and certainly maintaining this as a open space itself and providing the well-needed recreational area that we certainly could use. I think it's an excellent endeavor of the council and mayor working together. And so we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, my motion would be to approve the resolution of the Township of Bensalem authorizing the condemnation of certain real property as identified, Bucks County Tax Map parcel numbers 216, 262, 216, 243, and 216, 264 for the acquisition of township open space land and recreational land. And I might add that I agree with everyone on the board. There are times when we can disagree, but to Mr. Sloan's point, there was a bipartisan process amongst all five of us to see to it that we looked at the Trevose area in terms of doing this for the open space and recreational land. So thank you.
Interesting. Okay.
I'll second.
Floor, second on the motion. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Against, and abstentions unanimous.
Mr. Kiffelbeck, I probably should also just have said during my introduction that obviously the township did move somewhat quickly on this, in as much as, again, we came to be aware of the plans for the development, and before the engineer got too far down the road in its efforts to develop the property, the township came to all of you, the mayor, obviously is a proponent of this action as well. And were he here this evening, I'm sure he would want me to caution everyone who's within the sound of my voice that obviously What happens next is going to be part of a process. These won't be, there won't suddenly be a radical change in what's happening out there. This property was not part of the township's long-term park and recreation facilities plan coming into 2020. And so what happens next will obviously be a discussion that will involve council and the mayor as we move forward. But just want to make sure everybody's cognizant of that as well.
Okay, do we take the vote on it?
We did.
Okay, then we're set then. Okay, agenda item number 12, consideration of a resolution authorizing the placement of a referendum question on the November 2020 general election ballot to increase the property tax millage for a operation and maintenance of the Bensalem Rescue Squad. I will read what the referendum will read, how it should read or similar to it. It'd be something like this. Shall the Township Council of the Township of Bensalem be authorized to increase the real property tax for the operation and maintenance of the emergency medical services serving the township by an additional 1 mil? And that would be a yes or no question. And that would be on the referendum as on the general election. And we have Tom Topley here to make a presentation in terms of what their needs are and why they're requesting this at this time. Tom Topley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kisselbeck. Good evening, council. I guess to keep me on track, I prepared some notes. But, the history of Bensalem Rescue Squad is we started in 1980 as a 100% volunteer organization. And I had started at the Rescue Squad in 1985 as a volunteer. At that time, we had 3 full-time employees and about 70 volunteers. I began full-time at the Rescue Squad in 1991, and I've been director of the organization since 1994. Our staff's the best trained in Bucks County in the region. We take over 7,000 calls a year, almost 8,000 calls a year now. We did 7,900 calls in 2019 for emergencies in Bensalem. The call volume in Bensalem represents about 15% of the county's entire call volume for 911 ambulance service. Our hard work have gained us the reputation as one of the best organizations in the region, and we've gained many benefits for our residents over the years, including our partnership with Jefferson to bring the mobile stroke unit to Bensalem. Jefferson pays for all of that. This is not part of our need for our tax money or increased tax funding, but there's only 30 in the nation, and we were honored to be selected based on our reputation operations to host that. Bensalem Rescue Squad's also responded to many calls and worked in ways other rescue squads in the area can't do. The Liberty gas station explosion down on Route 13. Our personnel worked hand in hand with the fire department and rescue personnel and performed many of the technical rescue operations that went on at that scene. This type of operation takes years and hundreds of hours of training to be able to do technical rescues that are very complex like that one. We've also brought many innovative life-saving treatments to the residents and visitors of Lower Bucks County. We've been the first to bring many new drugs to Bucks County. We've been the first to trial many new techniques that have been very successful. We also, for the last few years, have had the best percentage of success to intubate people, put a tube in their lungs when they're not breathing and put them on a ventilator to keep them alive. And we've had the highest success rate in ROSC, the return of spontaneous circulation. Should somebody fall of sudden cardiac arrest, Bensalem's got the highest rate of getting pulses back. And these are the numbers that really count. These numbers represent actually saving lives. Many communities can say they have the best rescue squad, but we have numbers to prove it. So in the past 10 years, we've been able to do a lot of things to save money and keep money into our technology, our training, and our operations. A few of the things we have done is we've been rechassing our ambulances. We've been taking the box off the ambulance when it's got about 100,000 miles on it and putting a new vehicle under the box. And we've been able to do that with our mechanic in our station. That alone has saved the taxpayers of Bensalem over $500,000 in the last 10 years. But we're starting to get at a crossroads. Our boxes, our oldest ambulance body is a 2003. It's got almost 350,000 miles under it. They're going to need to be replaced. There's also a question about Ford continuing the production of our van front ambulances, the Ford cutaway chassis. When that happens, we will not be able to re-chassis any new ambulances or any ambulances on the new chassis because the cab to the rear axle will be different and the wheel of the ambulance body won't fit on the new chassis. So we have to start buying new ambulances. We also need to add some ambulances to our fleet. Right now we have a fleet of 6, and I would like to increase it to 7 minimum with our next purchase of ambulances. Just tonight, between 5:30 and 7:30, we had 9 calls in Bensalem Township. We were able to answer 5 of them with the 3 ambulances we have in service. But it's taken a toll on our fleet, this call volume. We've had a significant increase since 2010 in call volume, and it takes a toll on our fleet. So, we need to ask for increased tax funding to help with some of these capital purchases. Ambulances, our heart monitors are 15 years old. To give you examples of some price increases, the last time we bought an ambulance in 2011, it was $175,000 for a new ambulance. A new ambulance today, because safety standards have changed, we're looking at $275,000 to $300,000 for a new ambulance. Quite similar to what the fire companies are going through with the price of fire apparatus. As they improve technology and safety, it comes at a cost. We also need to look at some equipment with the COVID pandemic. We temporarily ceased doing advanced airways. We're back to doing basic life support airways for the safety of the paramedics. Right now, to put an advanced airway or to intubate somebody, we have to get very close to the patient's face, where all these droplets that are contaminants are contained. We're looking at video-assisted intubation equipment or video laryngoscopy, where we can actually guide the tube while we're sitting away from the patient, looking at a screen, keeping us distance from the patient's face. And that right now is our highest priority because we need to go back to performing advanced airways as soon as possible. So one of the things we need increased funding for is capital purchases. The next thing we need increased funding for, and our biggest immediate problem is there is such a shortage of paramedics and EMTs in the nation that we're having a very hard time hiring staff. And for the first time, probably in the last 10 to 15 years, we've lost 3 paramedics, full-time paramedics to other services. Well, 2 full-time paramedics and 1 part-time paramedic we're hoping to hire full-time to other nearby services. We have not had a base salary increase since 2010, although the paramedics have gotten cost of living increases. But the other rescue squads around us have increased their salary in the last 10 years. And we're now losing paramedics to other services that are comparable in Bucks County, and one we lost to the city of Philadelphia, who is, we were comparable with salary in 2010, and now they are about at top salary, $20,000 more than a Bensalem paramedic can make. So those are the 2 things we really need help with. And then we also need to be able to save some money. I foresee in the future, especially in the Andalusia area, that we're going to have to put a substation down there with the development at St. Catherine Drexel's and the development around the riverfront. We do occasionally have an ambulance in Andalusia. We house at Cornwall's Fire Company when there's large-scale emergencies or weather events, so we can spread our assets out throughout the community and get to places faster. But we may eventually have enough call volume down there for a permanent ambulance. Right now, we're running 2 ambulances 24/7. And last time we asked for tax money in 2010, the main goal of that was to add a 3rd ambulance for busy times. And we have a 3rd ambulance up almost every day of the week now during busy hours for 12 hours. And on the weekends, we actually have 4 ambulances during most days during daytime hours. So the township's getting busier. It's getting very hard to attract staff. And we have been as efficient as we can with all our equipment, and to keep the community to have the best possible care, the most up-to-date equipment and techniques, and the best training for our staff, we're looking to the township to approve this referendum. So with this information, I will take any questions, but I respectfully ask the Township Council to unanimously approve placing a referendum on November's ballot to increase funding for EMS in Bensalem Township by $1 million. Bensalem Rescue Squad has always been there for our community, and actually the community has always been there for our time of need. I'm very confident and hope that the voters will approve this millage. And I would just like to add, it represents $21 per year for the average household. So for the cost of getting 2 pizzas delivered one night a year, we can ensure our EMS service for the next 10 to 15 years. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I just
Tom, one of the,
I just
I
have
do.
I have a comment.
Yeah, Joe?
Tom, the service
Go ahead,
that
Joe.
your people give to this township is phenomenal. Having that stroke unit is a plus. If without our fire and our ambulance service, along with our police department, it would be a tragedy for us as a township. I think you guys all work hands in hand and do the right thing for our community, and I think it's just a positive, and I will support you in every way.
Thank you, Councilman. One of the best kept secrets in our township is how well the police, fire, and ambulance services get along. It does not really happen as well in other communities as it does in Bensalem. And as Dr. Rosenwasser with the stroke truck would say, that's the secret sauce to our success.
Yeah, Tom, I would just reiterate what Mr. Polari said. I think you guys do an outstanding job. And also, during our executive sessions, you really laid it out in more detail about the salary differentials compared to other squads. And we can't be underpaying our people and losing good people to other townships. And also, you explained to us the training that was necessary, and they come out of schools and they don't want to come to Bensalem because they're getting paid more at other locations. Once we get them here, I think they stay because they understand what a top organization you run, and they're willing to actually accept lower rate pay because of the quality of the organization. But we can't be losing people that we're starting to lose, and we can't be not being able to recruit the best people out of the training schools. And, this, as you emphasized already, it'll be up to the voters whether you get the extra mill, which is $21 per average household. But it'll be up to the voters to vote whether they want to give that to the rescue squad. But I'm in full support of it, and I'm in full support of putting it on the referendum. So thanks for coming out.
Hey, Tom, I want to reiterate everything that these guys have said, and I'll add that as we move further and further into the future, we've only seen Bensalem's population increase. That would correspond obviously to an increased number of calls and increased needs for the EMS and all of our first responders. So whatever we can do to support you, we certainly want to do it. I did have one question. One of the things that you mentioned that I don't recall from our previous conversations, you talked about the possibility of putting in a substation down in Andalusia. Would that be a capital expense for the EMS, or is that something that the township would fund? And do you know approximately how much that would cost?
I think it's too preliminary to even guess. We certainly have options. Right now, we actually pay rent to one of the local fire companies to house an ambulance. It could be possible to work that out with a fire company in Andalusia.
Okay.
I certainly will always look for donations and ways to get things done. And if not, we could finance something eventually. But yeah, the township changing, the demographics as far as the location of calls have changed a little over the years. Andalusia used to be a very slow area. Just took a little longer to get to, but now that's picking up with all the development in that area of town.
Anyone else?
Yep, Mr. Kisbeck, Tom, thanks so much for the presentation. I just echo the same sentiments as my other colleagues here on the board, and that you guys do a great job, and we certainly are going to support you in every way. I do have one question. There was a comment on the slide deck in terms of 1 in every 7, 9, 11 ambulance calls for Bucks County is handled by Bensalem EMS. So are you guys servicing other areas, I'm assuming, based off that comment?
So in Bucks County, when you call 911, it's forwarded to Bucks County Central Dispatch in Ivy Land, Pennsylvania, and they will send the closest ambulance available. We don't really service other communities as a first due, but through mutual aid, we service other communities if their ambulances are busy. Likewise, they service Bensalem. And of the 7,900 calls, about 450 times we service other communities, and about 450 times we get mutual aid from other communities because we're so busy. So it kind of evens out.
Okay, all right, yeah, thanks for the clarification. And also, Jesse had said about the substation, and I agree. I also had that as a question. We have 700 approximately units down there at Drexel. We're in phase 2 with Waterside, so we could very well need that supplemental help there at some point based off of the growth that we're seeing down there. So thanks for everything you do.
And I
Thank
like
you,
to,
Councilman.
and I would like to add, I'm in agreement with all the councilmen, and I certainly agree with your presentation. The thing that's unique to this is, of course, the residents of Bensalem who vote will decide whether this is something they want to do or not. All of us are in agreement at Bensalem and the council that this is certainly something needed. It's at least at a point where you're not waiting till you're to a point where you've diminished your funds as far as being able to run your EMS services to Bensalem Township. So it's been a long time since, I don't know how many years ago, but it's been a long time since this request was made to the residents. So I think they'll certainly understand it. And as you said, it's $21 a year. And so it's not a major amount of money, even though it's increasing the tax base is what they're doing. I think it's money well spent, and we appreciate everything you do for us, Tom. Thank you. So with that,
I'll make a motion that we accept putting the referendum question on the November 2020 general election ballot to increase the property millage for the operation and maintenance of the Bensalem Rescue Squad as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion on the floor, second. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Vote
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Tom. Good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, gentlemen, here we go. We're going to wrap it up, and we're going to have comments from our council members as well as supporting personnel. We're going to start with, let's start with our Vice President, Joe Polari.
Just
Thank
back,
you.
is there any public comment?
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? You're right. We do have some written public comment coming in. Since no one's in front of me, I did forget about that. So we do have some public comment, Mr. Pazzo. Is there any? I mean, Jesse must know there's something in there, or he reminded me anyway. Thank you.
Just reminding you, I'm not aware of anything.
There is a comment that was received from Elaine Gephardt president of the Chancellor's Glen HOA, and that's in regard to the Foley application that was tabled. So I'll forward that on to the administration. She's asking simply to know the distance from the proposed building to the property line and some other questions regarding buffering. We received a comment from Michael Simino of Trevos, and that's in regard to the condemnation of the trifecta sporting goods. Mr. Simino says it sounds like a good plan and thanks you all very much. We received a message or two from Samantha Elsie, Mr. Elsie's daughter, who was attempting to log in on the meeting to be able to watch council's consideration of the resolution. She, like I guess much of the world, was having some difficulty with Zoom, but I've made her aware that the meeting will be rebroadcast on the township website. We received an email from Joseph Connolly. We actually received this 2 times, but it appears to be the same message. Mr. Connolly, of course, is on Bristol Pike, regarding residents living on the 2nd floor of the smoke shop in the property adjacent to his. They were observed there Sunday morning, August 9, at 6:30 in the morning when the fire department arrived for a fire alarm. He says he has video from security cameras of 5 people exiting the 2nd floor, doesn't understand how it's happening, and he's, again, sharing his frustrations. To that end, I can make council aware, and Mr. Connolly for that matter, that the township code officer was out to the property again last Monday in a response to the information we had received from Township Emergency Services Department regarding the fire call and the circumstances as described by Mr. Connolly. In response, Township Code went out there and posted the property for no habitation. We were advised as of Friday that the property had been vacated. I believe our inspector went out and confirmed that on Friday. I know that the township also had Mr. Popley, the adjacent property owner, in court this morning. I apologize, I don't know the outcome of that hearing but I believe Mr. Quentin Neron, who is on with us, does have some information regarding what Mr. Popley's done regarding the stormwater management facilities out there that he was supposed to address.
Yes, we were out on Thursday of last week. Mr. Popley had hired another contractor to come out and redo the recharge basin that was required as their agreement with the old engineer, Ron Gans. That was done and inspected by our office and approved. We went back down and it was finally completed on Friday morning. I do know that there was a 30-day continuance for today's court hearing with Mr. Popley. I don't know the specifics because I was not in attendance at that hearing.
So, as council is aware, the township continues to proceed with both of those properties. We continue to remain in court. My understanding is that the engineer for Mr. Popley is formulating a plan that he's going to bring to the township regarding the pile of dirt and the stormwater issues associated with it. Obviously, We'll take a look at it as we would for any property owner, but the township is continuing in its efforts to have the problems associated with that pile of dirt, as we've come to refer to it, to have it removed. So those efforts continue.
Quentin, real quick, that recharge basin, was that on Mr. Connolly's property or Mr. Popley's property?
That's on Mr. Popley's property, the rear parking area that slopes down into Mr. Conley's property.
Okay. And is there any issue? I know there's a question or there's a legal issue, a battle, if you will, about the property line. Is that in any of this, I don't know, let's call it no man's land?
From the previous plans that I've seen between both properties, it's clearly on Mr. Popley's property.
Okay.
But that won't be until we get these other surveys, I guess, to confirm all that information.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I have a question for you. Did he ever enclose and do the things he was supposed to do with the trash enclosure?
The only thing remaining, I believe, on the trash enclosure is the landscaping in the rear. There's been some debris pushed up on top of the hill, which damaged the existing enclosed fence that was installed previously without the slots. I believe all the slots have now been installed, except for the landscaping in the back.
Are we going to get him to get that done? This has been going on for a couple of years now. Can we ever get this guy to do the things he was approved to do?
Well,
How do we do that?
Well, I know from what I understand, talking with code enforcement late this afternoon, they did give him 2 weeks to get the plan in, and I know he's got the 30-day extension with the Judge Gallagher to get everything 100%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have an email from a Becky Grabelny Colagrico. It's regarding Franklin Commons Apartments. It appears she is a tenant there. She's raising some concerns regarding parking, that guests and residents are taking up 2 spots for no reason, close to the entrance to the facility. She's apparently having some issues with the patio at her unit, that she's spoken to the police about noise concerns in general, but in light of the fact that they're continuing, she's now going to up her efforts to have those addressed. She's got a number of questions or issues regarding management at the complex. I've forwarded this email on to Mr. Farrell, to the mayor, to Mr. Samori, and to Director Harron and Deputy Director McVeigh, so they can all jump in and deal with those issues in some unified fashion. So, Ms. Colagrico, your comments have been forwarded on to the Township Administration for handling. Lastly, there's an email from Bob Norcus. It has a letter attached to it. I am unfortunately having difficulty getting the letter open. For the moment, my apologies to Mr. Norcus. I'll see if, while you're going through council comment, I can get it open. Otherwise, it may have to wait for a future meeting.
Is that it, Joe? For comments?
That's it for public comments.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the final agenda item then would be comments from our council and supporting personnel. And again, I'm going to start with our Vice President, Joe Polari.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're still going through the trying times in our wonderful United States. We're trying to do the best we can as a community. I think that we're working hard together to try and get through this time. Hopefully, we can get back to the point where businesses can open, kids can go to school, and we can get to some sort of normal living. In the meantime, we just keep trudging forward and making sure that we're here for the residents of Bensalem and keep each other safe. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. How about Joe Knowles? Would you like to go next? He's our secretary.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Yeah, I would just like to, say the same thing. We're doing these Zoom meetings for the public safety and, a little bit our safety too, I guess, but more the public and avoiding crowds. We're doing the best we can to move forward. We do have the executive session meetings in order to discuss things more in detail. I appreciate everybody's effort. I appreciate the community's effort in, keeping other people safe, doing what you can personally to keep others safe. And, I'm just hoping and praying that this thing, this COVID start dissipating and we'll have a vaccine at some point. And we'll just have to work hard and take care of ourselves and take care of our community in the meantime. But we had a good meeting tonight, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Tokmajian, Ed?
Thanks, Mr. Kisselbeck. I just want to agree it's been a challenging year for everyone. And I think all of us have been making the right decisions to keep us all safe. And to Mr. Knoll's point, hopefully we should see an end to this sometime in the near future. Just a couple administrative items. I wanted to touch on Mrs. Elsie's comment in regards to reaching us through with the meeting, and I do realize that it's televised live on TV, Verizon and Comcast. However, the way we're going with this, it could very well be that we're probably Zoom for the remainder of the year. And have we considered at least opening up the link just for viewing purposes to the public? Is that maybe a possibility or something that maybe we are considering?
I'll discuss that with our IT individual and with the director of our TV studio and see what our options are. Obviously, I think we've become a little bit more sophisticated now using Zoom, as has the entire world, at least in academic circles. Colleges seem to have brought it to a crashing halt earlier today, and I'm sure local schools, including our own system, will help to bring it to another crash in a week or two. So, but we'll see. Obviously, maintaining the control and security is always of paramount concern. In the early days of the pandemic, I've had relayed to me horror stories of things going out over the meeting waves and over the airwaves that were unattended and in many cases unfortunate. So we've done our best to try and prevent that. And certainly the procedures that we're using are in concert with the state sunshine law as modified by the state legislature in response to the pandemic. So, but that's a long-winded way of saying, up to this point, this has been what's worked. We can certainly take a deeper dive into what other options might be available to us in the future.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I asked. I wasn't questioning our efforts to this point, Mr. Pizzo. Just to give broader access. Certainly appreciate the consideration. And then just a couple points of building and planning. Quentin, I just wanted to extend thanks for addressing some of those items that I had sent in last week. I think it's called Harvest Run. I think the development over there. We had a couple items.
Barnsley East.
Okay. Yep.
Park Circle.
So thanks for getting back to me on that. And then I'm thinking about it. I know we had touched on the curbs and so forth, and you were looking at the curbs over in Eddington. Do you expect that you're going to be providing a report anytime soon on that?
I was talking to Russ about that today. I would think that was next week or this week, Russ?
Yeah, we'll have something out, this week on the Eddington curb situation.
Great. And then since we're in that area, anything on Fishers with all that concrete that was laid?
I've not heard anything from PennDOT. I did meet with them several weeks ago with Ken Farrell, and Ken Farrell did direct them that it's their best interest to get a professional to prepare plans to us. And I have not seen any plans like coming yet, so.
All right. Okay, thanks. And that's all I had.
Councilman
Excellent.
Sloan? Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Kissback. The only thing that I would add, so we don't beat a dead horse, is Labor Day is coming up in another week or two, and I just want to make sure everybody has a nice, safe holiday. Do your best to stay safe, and hopefully we can all get together soon.
All right, thank you. And I'll go to our personnel. Mr. Pizzo, would you like to add something?
I would note for the public only that, and I'm sure the mayor would want to share it were he here, that after a Facebook-imposed hiatus, the township has relaunched its Facebook page. So those of you that are social media savvy and that in the past have looked to and relied upon the Facebook page for information regarding township events and news of the day. The Facebook site is back up and running, so by all means, feel free to check it out.
Thank you. Russ Benner?
The only thing to report on, that Clark Avenue drainage project, probably, Quentin, 1 to 2 weeks away from being completed. And so far, relatively speaking, it's gone pretty smoothly.
Okay, thank you. And we have Bill McVeigh from the Police Department here with us tonight. Bill, would you like to add something to the evening?
No, thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Okay. Well, you're not a chip off of Fred Horan's shoulders, that's for sure. All right, thank you. I'm going to take a cue from you, and I'm just going to end the meeting also without a comment. But everything was said from our councilman I agree with. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night, and we'll ask for a motion to end the meeting.
So moved.
Motion accepted. Thank you very much. See you in a short time. See you
Good
after
night.
the holidays. Thanks, gentlemen.
Good night, gentlemen. Thank you.
And everybody.